Hello. I am here today recording a solo podcast, which I haven't done for a while, so I'm looking forward to this one. I'm going to talk today about some of the secrets that I think are really largely untalked about out there when it comes to changing your relationship with alcohol. So some of the things that need to be there in order for you to actually feel free from it and make it small and irrelevant in your life. So you're listening to this podcast and you've been struggling with alcohol lately. The first thing I want to remind you of, which I say all the time on here, is you are not alone. Women's drinking is at an all-time high. It's skyrocketed during the pandemic. Binge drinking is up by 41% with women. Canadians overall, 25% of Canadians are drinking way more than they were drinking before the pandemic. I mean, we're really in a bit of a crisis around this right now. And I am so busy as an alcohol coach, which is a reflection of what is going on in the real world for women. So many of you are wondering if you're drinking too much. And that can feel really horrible. And I know that because I was there for many years. I was questioning my relationship with alcohol, so much so that I would get up sometimes in the middle of the night and Google things like, am I an alcoholic? Or how do I moderate my drinking? Or evidence red wine is good for you. Those were all things that I was regularly searching in the middle of the night in my kind of anxiety-fueled panic sessions. That were so common for me in the last couple of years before I gave up alcohol. So I get it. And it never feels good to become aware of the fact that something is not the way you want it or that something is not serving you. I've said this part as well many times on this podcast. Awareness can be really uncomfortable. It can feel really icky when you realize that you have gotten to a place where you're doing something that's not serving you anymore. But I really want to encourage you, if you're feeling that way, to just really embrace that, because awareness is the necessary precursor to change. Without awareness, we don't do anything to change our situation. If we don't know what's wrong, we can't start fixing the problem. So we need to celebrate the fact that you're even listening to this podcast and thinking to yourself, yeah, I think I should keep listening because I don't think I'm in a great place with alcohol right now. And maybe it just crept up on you like it crept up on me. You know, I had many years where alcohol was part of my life and not problematic at all. As I was really raising my kids, I think it started to get worse and worse. I was using it as a way to escape, as a reward at the end of a long day. It was almost like my thing, my time when I would have a glass or two of wine at the end of the day. And that was okay for a few years. But then eventually, you know, some bigger stressful things happened and I started using it more obviously as a coping mechanism and as a tool to relax and escape and kind of numb out the emotions that I didn't want to feel. And I also started drinking more because that's how alcohol works. It's an addictive substance. We build a tolerance to it. Nobody is immune from this. It's the way it works in the human body. And I started needing more than just one or two glasses to feel good. And that is when I really started questioning what was going on. And I started worrying that I was drinking too much. And, you know, even though I saw all around me people drinking the same amount as me, and, you know, alcohol is just so incredibly normalized in our culture. So the media, movies, television, I mean, women, successful, gorgeous, competent women are drinking their faces off on all of these shows and in these movies with no repercussions whatsoever. So it really is normalized. And I saw all of that, but I still felt like something was wrong. And this is where I would really say, like, if you're feeling just a niggling sensation that you're not where you're supposed to be, or that something is off with your relationship with alcohol, lean into that. Don't ignore it. We need to listen to our intuition more on this. I don't know why we need to wait until we are close to or at rock bottom before we make change around alcohol. It's the most ridiculous thing that it doesn't feel accessible to women to actually ask for some help to make change around alcohol, unless they can point to some major consequence that it's had in their life. I didn't have any of those. I had no rock bottom moments. There was nothing that happened in my life that, caused me great alarm or cost me anything significant. I didn't have any of that. Now, when I look back on it, I can see that there were lots of what I call high bottom moments. So moments that I think, I really wish that hadn't happened. But I didn't get a DUI. I didn't put my kids at risk. It didn't interfere with my life. I wasn't drinking during the daytime. None of that stuff was happening for me. But if you're listening and you're thinking, I think I need to listen to this podcast, then please keep listening to this podcast. It's so important. So I'm going to get into, as I said, 4 or 5 things that I think are really key when it comes to changing your relationship with alcohol in a way that actually feels great. Because I am not about feeling deprived and white knuckling your way through this. That is a complete, in my opinion, a completely unsuccessful attempt at changing your relationship with alcohol. It's not pleasant, and I don't think it's sustainable for anybody. So when I'm talking about the keys to changing your relationship with alcohol, I'm talking about the keys to actually making it small and irrelevant in your life. And what I mean by that is making it so unimportant that you hardly ever think about it. It's definitely not running the show or calling the shots anymore. And you can literally take it or leave it. And then you get to decide whether you take it or leave it. I truthfully just got to a place where I could not figure out why I would keep taking it. It just made no sense to me. I realized that it was really adding absolutely nothing to my life, and that my life without it was just infinitely better. And I just could not see a reason to jeopardize that. And I don't know that I ever will. But some people get to a place where they make it small and irrelevant, and they still decide to take it every once in a while. That is up to you. But the kind of common thread in both of those scenarios is that you're not thinking about it very often. It is something that is very easy for you to walk away from, and it is not in any way controlling you. So before I get into the tips and ideas that I have around this that I think are going to give you some really great kind of food for thought and a place to start off from, a jumping off place, I just want to tell you about a new program that I've got going on, which I'm super excited about. I have been wanting to do a shorter alcohol related program for a really long time, but I'm really, really busy. It's just me, as you probably know. I run my own show. I have a couple of people who help me out with some of the admin stuff, but I'm pretty much a one-woman show over here, and my private practice is super busy always. Almost always have a wait list for that, and that's amazing, but it means I don't have a lot of time for other stuff. And I do have a small group coaching program, but it is by application only. And I love that group, but there's only one of me. So what I've really been dreaming about doing for a long time is creating a shorter program that is really meant to be an introduction to living alcohol-free, a circuit breaker of sorts to really interrupt your patterns, both your mental patterns and your physical habits around alcohol, and give you an opportunity to experience, with some coaching support, a lot of these pieces that I think are essential that I'm going to talk about in this podcast. So I couldn't figure out how to do that myself. It's been literally on my list. I keep moving it to the next month's list to do. And then I had this very, I don't know what we'll call it, but almost like a light bulb moment, which is rare as someone in menopause to have an actual light bulb moment. But I thought, oh my gosh, I bet there's somebody else out there who I know and trust, who feels as passionate about this topic, that also wants to create a short program and hasn't had the time to do that. And I reached out to my really good friend, Emily Lynn Paulson, who is also a certified This Naked Mind coach. She's the author of Highlight Real Recovery. She runs a group online for moms called Sober Mom Squad. And I asked her whether she would be interested in co-creating and coaching a small program with me, so a shorter timeline program, and she was all over that. So together we have created this amazing program called Rewind. It is a 6-week program, and it is designed to actually rewind you, that is, take you back to a time when alcohol was not running the show, when alcohol was small and irrelevant. And the way it works, we basically have 1 week, which we're calling the pause, where you just kind of examine your current relationship with alcohol. So at this point, you're not really trying to change your relationship or drink less. You're just paying attention to how alcohol is actually making you feel and identifying some of the triggers that are present for you. And then we move into, together as a group, a 4-week rewind program, which is the alcohol-free experiment portion. So for 30 days, we will experiment with life alcohol-free. And then we have a week after that where we assess together what makes sense for you going forward. Is it a good idea for you to try to moderate right away, or would you be better served by lengthening your alcohol-free period before you consider that? Those are all the things we're going to talk about in that last week. So I love the format of this program. It's based on the This Naked Mind approach to changing your relationship with alcohol, and also on everything that I have kind of been teaching and coaching around in relation to burnout and habit change over the last 11 years or so. So that program is now available, and I'm excited about that. If you want the details for that, you can go to wendymccallum.com/rewind. So that's wendymccallum.com/rewind. Okay, enough about that. Now I want to start getting into some of the, what I see as kind of the secrets to actually getting free from this thing and getting out of the willpower game. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to embrace curiosity. So you need to let go of this idea that you know how to do this. And also, I think this is even more important, you need to let go of this idea that you know what it's going to be like to not drink. Because I think we make a lot of assumptions around life without alcohol. And those assumptions kept me stuck in drinking for a very, very long time. So assumptions like, this is going to suck. This is going to be so hard. I am going to have to miss out on so many things. I am not going to fit in. It's going to be no fun. I am not going to be able to relax or sleep or cope without this thing. If you want to take back some control and get free of alcohol, you have to throw out this idea that you actually know what it's like to live without alcohol, because you don't. This is the truth of it. Even if you've taken a break, even if you've done a dry January or sober October before, you've never done it the way I'm going to teach you to do it. You have done it in a willpower and deprivation-based way, which is more like, I have to do this. I've been drinking too much. I need to take a break. And I am just going to not drink this month, which means I'm going to miss out on all of these things. And this is going to be really damn hard. And I'm going to feel super deprived, but it'll be a really big accomplishment. And then probably also, I can't wait till this is over so I can drink again. That's not helpful. Instead, what you want to do is lean into curiosity. I really want to encourage you to ask yourself this question. What if taking a break from alcohol and going alcohol-free actually makes everything easier and better? What if that's true? How would that change things for you? How would that change your mindset and motivation to try a month alcohol-free if you were thinking about it that way instead of thinking about it in terms of how much it's going to suck? So this is curiosity, right? The other thing we need to get curious about is like, what is the deal with alcohol anyway? Why am I so hooked on this stuff? Why is it so hard for me to not have a drink when I've made a promise to myself to not drink anymore because I know it's not doing me any favors anymore? Why is it so hard? What's up with this substance? And so the curiosity piece comes in around learning about alcohol, which is, of course, something in the Rewind program that we're going to be teaching you. All of the things that blew my mind when I first found out about them in relation to alcohol, and the science behind alcohol, what's happening in your brain, and why it is so hard for us to make a change without the proper tools and support. So curiosity is a piece of that too. We just need to basically try to get ourselves back to that kind of blank slate place where we just let go of all our preconceived notions around alcohol and also being alcohol free, and just get into full learning mode where we're just trying to collect as much information as possible. This is so powerful. This is such a big piece of this whole puzzle. So getting into experiment mode and gathering information or data is really, really important. And honestly, if you think back to the times you've taken a break from alcohol in the past, my guess is you have been doing no data collection. You've been paying attention to nothing. We're talking about paying attention to the stuff that's hard, but also paying attention to the stuff that's great. Really celebrating that. How is this affecting my sleep, my relationships, my ability to be present with my children, my energy levels during the day, the way I feel physically? How is not drinking affecting all of those things? And then also gathering data around the parts of it that are hard. Why did I have this craving? What happened today that did not happen yesterday when I basically sailed through the day and didn't have any cravings? Paying attention to all of that, really, really important. That's curiosity. So that's number one. That's the number one key to getting some freedom from alcohol. The second thing you absolutely need to have is self-compassion or self-grace. You have got to stop beating yourself up. And this is something I've talked about before in conjunction with other habit changes. But when we are in that cycle of shame and blame, so with alcohol, it looks something like this. Wake up in the morning, you feel kind of crappy, you had too many drinks the night before, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm not drinking today. I'm not doing that again. That was such a bad idea. I don't feel great today. You make a promise to not drink, and then 5 o'clock comes around and you start craving it. And you maybe white knuckle your way through a couple of hours, but then the dinner gets done and the kitchen gets cleaned up and everybody's off doing their homework, and you think, well, it's there. I could just have one glass. What if I just had one glass? And you fight it for a while, and then eventually you have the glass, and that probably leads to another glass and maybe a third glass. And then you go to bed and you don't sleep very well, and you wake up and you say, what the hell? Why did I do that again to myself? I'm such an idiot. I know this is making me feel crappy. I know I'm drinking too much, but I can't stop. What does that do? That cycle of shame and blame just creates more stress and anxiety. And I know that because I was stuck in it for a long time. And that anxiety and stress just triggers us even more to try to escape or numb. And of course, alcohol is our tool of choice. So it just is fuel. We're just adding fuel to the fire with that. We have to practice self-compassion, and you really do have to practice it because it's not going to be easy. But you have to practice saying to yourself, this is not my fault. You know, and I talk a lot in the course of Rewind and in all the coaching that I do about the fact that the problem is with alcohol, not with us. Alcohol is an incredibly addictive substance. It is the most dangerous drug on the dangerous drug spectrum. It kills more people and harms more people than any other drug out there. But it's legal, and we push it like it's a treat and a reward, and we actually tell women that we need it to cope and to parent and to just get through life, just to do life. It's so normalized. What we need to do is we need to step into self-compassion, and we need to say, look, there's a reason why this is so hard, and it's not my fault. And we need to remind ourselves of that when we have cravings or urges, or we drink when we were hoping that we wouldn't drink. And we need to do our very best to stay in that place of self-compassion. And that is because the only way to move forward is to keep going. And the shame and blame cycle keeps us stuck. So if we can forgive ourselves and say, okay, this isn't my fault. What did I learn from this? How can I use what I learned to actually set me up for greater success in the future? Then we can move on and continue on that path towards what we want. So first key, curiosity. Second key, self-compassion. Third thing that we need to do is we really need to change the way we're framing our goal around alcohol. So if your goal is to just not drink for 30 days, then that is a deprivation-based goal. You are framing it in deprivation. I am not going to have this thing for 30 days. That is my goal. It is also a behavior or action-based goal. I'm not going to drink. That's the goal, right? So a couple problems with that. First of all, a deprivation-based goal is leading to negative emotion. It's making you feel deprived, duh, obviously, like you're going to be missing out. And like this is going to be really super hard and unpleasant. And when you're feeling all of those negative emotions, you are far less likely to actually achieve do the behavior that is required to achieve the goal. So a deprivation-based goal is basically a recipe for not achieving your goal. Think about all the other times you've tried to do things and it's been rooted in deprivation. How long has it lasted? How long have you been able to keep that up? Not very long. And that's because you have nothing to look forward to. What if we flip your goal around here and we say, look, forget about this whole I'm not drinking for 30 days. I'm going to focus in on how I want to feel instead of how I want to behave. Because when we're focusing in on what we want to do, like that not drinking for 30 days goal, what we're doing there is we're basically setting it in stone that the only way to succeed is to not drink for 30 days. There's only one path to success in that scenario. If we decide instead to frame our goal from a place of emotion and abundance and how we want to feel instead of what we want to do. So if the goal is I want to make alcohol small and irrelevant so that I don't feel like it's running the show anymore. That was my goal. That is a feeling-based goal. This is how I want to feel. And there are so many different paths to success. There are so many different ways I could get there. I could get there by continuing to drink and learning everything I can about alcohol and my relationship with alcohol, and then starting to experiment with days alcohol free and still drinking on the weekends, and then eventually get to a place where I'm stringing together a few weeks at a time of being alcohol free, and then maybe eventually getting to a place where that feels so good that I decide to just keep it going for a few months. And then at some point I wake up and I realize, oh, holy shit, I'm not even thinking about this anymore. I don't want it and it's small and irrelevant. That's one path to that goal. But I could also say, I'm going to just experiment with not drinking now and start not drinking and realize that that's actually pretty great. And then just keep making the decision to continue not drinking because it feels so good. And then eventually wake up one morning and say, oh, look at that. I am not thinking about this substance all the time. It is no longer running the show. My point is that with a feeling-based goal, there are many different ways to get there. You're setting yourself up for success. And the truth is, life happens and it throws a wrench all the time into our action or behavior-based plans. It does. That's just how life works. So instead of framing your goal from a place of deprivation, frame it from a place of abundance or positivity. I'm going to be free from alcohol. This is going to be amazing. It's not going to be running the show anymore. I'm not going to be thinking about it all the time. This is going to be so great. I'm going to be energized. I'm going to sleep better, etc., etc. And, do your very best to frame that goal or have that goal be based in how you want to feel as opposed to what you want to do, because that gives you some flexibility in your method of achieving the goal, if that makes sense. So reframing your goals is really, really important. We know that we achieve change faster as humans if there's a positive emotion associated with the behavior. We have to feel good about it. We have to be able to celebrate our successes with it. And if it's a deprivation-based goal where you're just going to white knuckle your way through 30 days of not drinking, there is no positive emotion associated with that. It is hard to find, as opposed to that other abundance-based goal of how you want to feel, taking it step by step. That is the type of goal that will be much easier to have small successes in and celebrate every step along the way. Okay, so reframing your goals is the third thing. I think another thing that's really important is to stop relying on willpower alone. And this is where I think this naked mind really veers away from a lot of the traditional approaches to quitting drinking or drinking less. In that, the focus in this naked mind is on getting people away from willpower as their main tool as soon as possible. And I am always doing this with my clients, whether we're working around alcohol or food-based behavior or any other unwanted, unhealthy coping mechanism. We are always talking about how willpower is a very unreliable resource and tool. We only have so much willpower every day. And we use it all day long to make decisions. So by the end of the day, our willpower reserve is always pretty low. And the nighttime is the time when women tend to rely most heavily on unhealthy coping mechanisms. So if you're trying to change the way you drink in your relationship with alcohol, and you mostly drink at night after work, which is when most of the women, the gray area drinkers that I work with, get themselves into trouble with alcohol, you are trying to make change using willpower at a time of day when your willpower is notoriously low. You just don't have much left in the tank. So you're setting yourself up for failure there. Instead, what you want to do is you want to start doing two things. One, you want to build a toolkit of other tools and coping mechanisms that you can use in the moment that are not willpower based. And I have so many of those, and those are all part of the Rewind. We'll be teaching you those, and also in obviously my private coaching, I teach that. So you want to make sure that you're not just relying on willpower as your only tool. The other thing though that you need to do is you need to start working on shifting your beliefs around alcohol. You really need to dig into what are all the things that I think are true about alcohol, and then ask yourself in as objective a way as possible, is this really true? And really become a detective almost with it, and gather some evidence. Like, for example, I believed for years and years and years and years that alcohol helped me to relax. I mean, I thought that that was as true as the sky is blue. And you couldn't have convinced me otherwise. But when I started working on my own relationship with alcohol, and I bought into this idea that maybe I had some beliefs around alcohol that were keeping me stuck, that were not true, and I opened up my mind to the possibility that they might not be as true as I thought they were, I started exploring this one and learning about alcohol. So that curiosity piece kicked in, and I learned all kinds of things about alcohol. But one of the things I learned is that alcohol is a depressant, but it's also a stimulant, in that when our brain is depressed chemically by alcohol, our brain will do its level best to counter that. So basically, our brain is looking for a way to bring itself back up when alcohol has brought it down or slowed it down. And the way that our brain does that is by pumping out two hormones called adrenaline and cortisol, which, guess what, are the stress hormones. So what that means is alcohol is a depressant and a stimulant, because adrenaline and cortisol jack you up and create anxiety. So this substance that I was relying on to help me relax was actually pushing me into fight or flight and contributing to my stress and anxiety. Isn't that nuts? I had no idea. So this belief that I had that felt so true to me was actually not scientifically true when we looked at how alcohol impacts the brain. I also, though, looked at how alcohol was helping me feel relaxed. So I kind of went through the scenario of how I thought alcohol relaxed me. And in my mind, I thought, well, I have that one glass and I feel relaxed, which, alcohol will do that. Obviously, it's a depressant. So it slows your brain down, and you get a little feeling of euphoria as your blood alcohol level rises. And that makes you feel good. And it also, because it slows your brain down, it gives you the sensation of things slowing down and of relaxing for 20 minutes until my brain tries to balance that back out and again jacks me up with cortisol and adrenaline. But even if I continue drinking, so if I have another glass of wine after that and I have that same kind of depressant effect in my brain continues to get more and more depressed, even if that feels relaxing in the moment, what I was not paying any attention to or giving any weight to was what happened afterwards. And what would happen is I would go to bed, I would fall asleep, and I would have the most terrible sleep. I would not sleep well. I would not sleep deeply. I would usually wake up at around 3 or 3:30 in the morning, wide awake like a meerkat, so anxious. And again, that's because of the cortisol and adrenaline that was waking me up like there was a 5-alarm fire. And I would be really stressed out about the fact that I drank the night before. And then I would sometimes get out of bed and have to go get my computer out and start researching and come up with a plan for how I wasn't going to drink tomorrow and all the rest of it. And then eventually I'd get myself back to bed. I'd wake up the next morning and I'd be beating myself up over all of this. None of this is relaxing. None of this is relaxing. So it might be relaxing for the couple of hours that I'm drinking, but the other 22 hours of the day after that, not remotely relaxing. I was choosing 2 hours of relaxation and I was trading in 22 hours of peace of mind for that. And when I started thinking about it that way, that really helped to shift my mindset and belief around the fact that alcohol helps me to relax. And that's a big piece of where the freedom comes from for me. Understanding that alcohol doesn't do any of these things that I believed that it did. So I went through that same exercise around all of the other beliefs that I had around what alcohol was doing for me. And this, again, is something that we will be going through and taking you through in the course of that Rewind program. So that is the idea of really trying to rely as little as possible on willpower. We're always going to have to rely on willpower a little bit, especially in the beginning. But what we want to do is be replacing willpower as our primary tool with some other really great coping mechanisms and tools. And there are so many of them. I can't go into them here, but so many things that we can do in the moment. And also really addressing those beliefs that are keeping us stuck and really questioning whether they're actually true and digging into those. And so the last thing I think I wanted to talk about is the importance of community and connection, which I think is a real key to lasting freedom from alcohol. I think you need to be able to talk about this out loud and not feel like this is some kind of dirty, shameful secret that you have, because it's not. It's not. The overwhelming majority of adults drink, and most of the people who drink wish they drank less. So you are not alone in this. And we need to talk about this more. This is, again, part of that missing conversation I'm always talking about. We need to normalize the decision to not drink. Alcohol is the only drug that I need to justify not taking. I am never like out at a coffee shop ordering a decaf and my friend saying, "Oh, come on, just have one. Just have one caffeinated. Just have one espresso." No one's saying that to me. I'm not at a party and someone, is passing a joint around and I say, no, thanks. And they're like, "Oh, come on, just have a couple puffs." That doesn't happen. But with alcohol, I need to justify it. I need to explain to people why I choose not to take this drug. And I think we need to work on changing that. And this isn't me judging people who drink. I was a drinker for a long time and it worked for me for a long time, but it did not work for me after a certain point in time. And I know that if you're still with me and listening to this podcast, it's not working for you either. Or you know somebody for whom it's not working. We need to shift the conversation. It needs to be totally okay to choose to drink something non-alcoholic. And I think a big piece of how we do that is by talking about this. And in order to talk about it, we need community. We need to find connection. We need to find like-minded people. And I think that is a big piece of finding freedom from alcohol. So I know that the anonymous approach works for some people, and I am not in any way dissing that, but there is no way that would have worked for me. I could not be walking around right now feeling like I needed to have a secret about this. And I feel so much freer as a result of being able to talk about it. I have no shame around this. I was a gray area drinker, and it was not because I was flawed or weak. It's because alcohol is an addictive substance, and anybody who drinks it for long enough and drinks enough of it is going to become addicted to it. And I really think that, the difference between people who become dependent on it and those who don't is that at some point, many of us decide to use it as medicine. So we reach for it as a way to cope or as a way to relax. And that is when the switch flips for us and it becomes a very different game. And I think that is very common in busy women, especially busy women who are also trying to raise kids and take care of aging parents and have all of the variety of responsibilities on us. Alcohol for so many of us becomes a treat, a reward, a coping mechanism, a way to relax. And we do so much better with this if we are not alone in it. And that is why I am so passionate about creating community around this, talking about it on the podcast, but also creating programs like Rewind that have a community component to it. It's why my small group coaching program is so popular. I worked with most of the women who were in my small group program. I worked with them privately first, and they realized they did not want to be alone in this. They wanted to meet and talk to other women who were making the same changes that they were and struggling with the same challenges that they were. So finding community and connection, I think, and talking about this stuff out loud is such a key piece of actually achieving freedom with alcohol. So I hope that helped. If you're still with me, that is those are some of the things I think that are really important. I mean, there are so many I could talk about this for hours and hours, but I wanted to just touch on the ones that I think are kind of the biggest differences, and what for me and my own experience in becoming alcohol free were kind of the biggest keys. So I am rapidly approaching 4 years alcohol free, and it was the best thing I could ever have done for myself. I don't miss it one bit. I am not thinking about it. I am living my life doing all the things I was doing before, except for the things that I realized I actually wasn't enjoying doing and alcohol was just making them tolerable. I don't do those anymore. But all the things I love, I do, and I do them alcohol free. I travel. I'm in all kinds of social groups. I go out and eat at fancy restaurants. I go to all inclusives. I celebrate the holidays, and do cottage and I do all of that stuff without alcohol, and it's amazing. And the reason it's amazing is because it is so small and irrelevant for me. It's just not a factor. In fact, I don't think I would think about it at all if it wasn't the fact that I largely do this for a living. So I'm, talking about it all day long with the women that I work with. So I hope you found that helpful. And again, if you're curious about that Rewind program, I'm really excited about it. And I think you're going to love Emily, who is my co-coach. We kind of split the content. And so half of it is her and half of it is kind of me. And then the coaching all the coaching is also being shared. So you'll have the opportunity to get support from both of us. And I mean, she's just such an experienced coach in this area and has her own story, which is very different from mine. And I think together we complement each other really well. So if you want to get more information on that, you can go to wendymccallum.com/rewind. I would love to get to know you more. And if you have questions, feel free to send me a DM or an email. I'd be happy to answer them. Have a wonderful day, everybody.